Hey, y'all. Welcome to Simple Conversations. This is KJ.
Hey, and it's Alice. So pause us for a minute, grab you something to drink, come back, sit down, and be a part of this conversation.
Because we have a lot to say. Welcome to Simple Conversations. Hey, y'all. Welcome back to Simple Conversations. Hey, Alice.
Hey, good morning. You guys, thanks so much for tuning in and listening and coming back to hear more conversations.
Yes. So glad you're here. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too.
So for the listeners, it is August 2021. We don't know when you'll be listening to this. Doesn't matter when. It'll still be good, relevant, and valid, and hopefully helpful. But yeah, it's a beautiful day here in Virginia.
It is. It's hot.
Yeah.
It's
hot.
It is. I'm ready for sweaters. I'm ready for, it's time for the seasons to change. I'm ready.
It's coming. It's coming. Slow down.
I know.
It's coming. Don't wish our time away. Good grief.
I know, but this time of the summer, I'm always like, I'm ready now. Like It's been summer and now I'm ready.
But you've only been to the beach one time.
I know, but I can go to the beach even when, the weather changes.
True.
So we do need to go to the beach.
True.
And if you guys don't live where you have access to the beach, I'm so sorry.
We're sorry.
Because
we can get to sand and water. Well, from where I live, I can get to sand and water in 12 minutes.
Yeah, it takes me at least 30.
Yeah.
To 45. It just depends on where I go for sand and water, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But still lovely.
Yes. Yeah. And there's just something about those waves and the smell and the feel of it all. Like it just really, for me, there's just something therapeutic for sure. And, I think I've always felt that way because, I grew up in Eastern North Carolina. So going to the beach was a thing for us always.
It was.
Yeah. I remember when I lived in New York, I was in upstate New York. So what they called the beach was not an ocean, and it was a lake. And I remember the first time I went there and I was like, this is not a beach. Like, this is not the beach. Like, it's rocky and it's like the dirt is different and there's no salt water, guys. Like, this is not the ocean. And I think it wasn't until then that I realized how blessed we were, or that I grew up, by the beach, and, what a significant part of my life that was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the beach. I love putting my toes in the sand. Mm-hmm. I love to visualize standing in the water and with the ebb and the flow of the water, like taking all of my problems out to sea. It's like a guided meditation for me, like the first 7 or 8 minutes that I'm at the beach. I love it.
Yeah, I love it too.
Yeah.
So. Okay. We definitely another day.
Yes.
All right. Okay, so our conversation today, we're talking about daddies.
Yes.
Our daddies specifically.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what are 3 things you have learned from your daddy?
Okay. So when you told me that, I don't have just 3 things that I've learned from him. I have a lot of things that I learned from him. And I'll just kind of list them. Okay. So my daddy was old school country boy. He did serve a time in the Navy. He too was from Eastern North Carolina. He did not ever complete his high school education. He was a welder pipe fitter by trade, and ended up owning his own business eventually. Like, he did a lot of what they call shutdown work, where he would travel to like big construction sites and do work for months at a time, or maybe for like a year. I don't know, when I was younger, and travel and do that and then come home to us. But he was away a lot when I was really little. What did I learn from him? I learned hard work from him because he was definitely a hard worker. I don't ever remember him being sick a day in my life. I remember one time when I was a teenager, right after him and my mom split up, he had oh, what's the thing? It's like behind your belly button. Like you get it from straining.
Like hernia
Yes,
or
yes, a hernia.
okay.
He had a hernia operation and had a hernia removed. That's the first time I'd ever seen him like down. Does that make sense? Like other
Yep.
than, taking a nap in the recliner. That was the first time. And not since then until, just before he passed. He was a nonconformist. He did not like being told what to do. He
Mm.
definitely made his own way, and he didn't really care what other people thought about it. And I
Are
think
you talking about my daddy right now or your daddy?
right?
This is so funny.
Yeah.
Okay.
My revelation that God gave me about my dad, we had in my early adult years, we had some challenges, and God very clearly told me about my dad that he was doing the best he could with what he had, that he
Yes.
was not withholding from me.
Yes.
And that has carried me not just through that relationship and changed absolutely how I navigated that relationship then, but lots of other relationships, and being able to share that with other people in my coaching business, that people really are doing the best that they can. I do believe that. And that he was not withholding was huge. That was huge. He
That's so
also
good.
would have been my introduction to Willie Nelson and Hank Williams.
All right.
And my love of ice cream had to come from him because he loved ice cream too. He was a bourbon drinker, so Beam's Choice would have been his drink of choice.
Okay.
And I think my love of nature came from him.
Oh.
Like I remember going canoeing with him as a little girl. He took me hunting one time, even though I was never going to kill anything. I think we were squirrel hunting on a Thanksgiving, but I was never going to kill a squirrel. I was never going to shoot anything. I just went for fun. But he did teach us all how to shoot and how to shoot a bow and arrow, like both, where we grew up. But I do think my love of nature came from him. He would get up early and sit out on his deck in the mornings and drink his coffee. And yeah, I can see where I got that from him. So those are some of the things I learned.
That's so interesting. That it really is, because yeah, my dad would get up in the mornings and drink his coffee sitting on the back porch this time of the year and smoke his cigarettes. And this time of the year watching the hummingbirds. He fed all the birds. Yeah, so interesting. A few
Go ahead.
Yeah. So a few things that I have learned, and actually I love what you said about he was loving you the best way he knew how, or doing the best he could, because that is just an epiphany that I've had recently about my dad, because honestly, we have had volatile seasons.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, one thing that my daddy loved a party.
Okay.
Like he loved a party. Okay. He loved a Miller Lite. He loved vodka. He loved potato chips. He loved smoked salmon dip. He loved a good pig picking. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
he loved a party.
They would have been friends. I wonder if they knew each other. They could have known each other.
Isn't that interesting? It's so interesting. But I also learned that one too many will ruin the party. Okay.
Yeah.
Learn that.
Yeah.
From him.
Yeah.
In fact, yes. I also learned too that I'm an entrepreneur. And so I learned from my daddy that, and very valuable lesson, to always have a business plan. And that just because you love to eat and love to cook and love to drink and love to serve drinks doesn't mean that you can run a restaurant business. And that if you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Correct.
And so, yeah, even though, some of our family, especially my stepmom, would say that was probably a time in her life that she would want to forget, because she invested everything she had into my dad's business venture. That it was, I can look back on that time and say, I learned a valuable lesson from that. So always have a business plan before you start a business. So, yeah, and listen, my love for potato chips, absolutely. Are you kidding me right now? If you opened up a bag of potato chips, if my dad opened up a bag of potato chips, he was going to eat the whole bag.
That's funny.
Yeah. Yeah, I love potato chips. Yeah. So does my brother. Like, we just love chips. So yeah,
Daddy would eat peanut butter and Ritz crackers,
oh,
and you put the peanut butter on the salt side because it changed the flavor of the Ritz cracker.
oh, how about that?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And he
Okay,
was funny too about when he made a sandwich, like he was very peculiar about things. Like the mayonnaise always went with the meat and the mustard with the cheese. Like you never put the mayonnaise and the cheese together.
oh,
Yeah, because they're
and
both
I would do it just the opposite.
and the mustard complements the cheese better than the mayonnaise does.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, but he was very specific about that. Like he had one kind of glass he liked to drink out of. He had one type of fork. He did not like eating out of paper plates or plastic utensils. None of that. He wanted more ice than anything else in his glass. If he was having iced tea or ice water, you filled that cup all the way to full with ice first.
how about that?
Yeah, so some of those quirky things, like those are things that I don't know that you ever forget that. Like,
Right.
yeah, funny.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, like the last one that I would mention, in this part of the discussion is that, you just love as much as you can, whether you have a half a pint or you have a 5 gallon, you just love as much as you can. And I believe that even though there were times that I felt like he was withholding from me because I was his daughter, I don't really know,
Right.
or he just couldn't give it. I believe that he gave what he could.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So interesting.
So your dad passing is much fresher than mine. So how long has it been since your dad passed? Where are you at?
It has been 5 weeks.
Okay. So, and I'm at, Daddy passed in February of 2019. No, 2020.
Right.
February of 2020.
No, it wasn't 2020 because it wasn't during COVID.
It was right before COVID.
It was before COVID.
Yeah, so it was February because COVID didn't start until like March, April. And we talked about how
oh, that's right.
He would have never, because when I went back I was reminiscing pictures to see if there was anything I forgot. And I actually started in December of 2018. And I was like, that's not right. That's too early. And we had him Christmas of 2019 because we had him and grandmama both the first couple months of 2020. And then, all hell broke loose in 2020.
Right.
So, yeah. I was saying that because I was thinking about something. Now I don't know what I was thinking about. Go ahead. Let's keep talking. It'll come back to me.
Well, okay. So your dad has now passed. It's
okay.
2, 6, 17, 18 months, a year and a half.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And it's been 5 weeks for me.
Yeah.
So, so one of the things that I've learned since my daddy has passed is, which has been very, very interesting, that I can have peace and sadness.
Yeah. At the same time.
At the same time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who in the world would have thunk that?
Yeah.
Like, I just never really recognized that you can have two, like,
conflicting.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember thinking that and talking about that when Daddy passed, because when he passed, we buried him on February 13th. We came home, and his death was unexpected. Like his whole sickness was unexpected. So that was like a month, just a whirlwind of a month, because when I was looking back at pictures, Tim and I lost a dear friend of ours, Felicia. We were there for Felicia. to visit her when Carla was delivering her baby, conflicting emotions, the joy of this baby, unexpected,
Yes.
this miracle baby, and the passing of a friend. She was very sick at the time. When we buried Felicia, Tim did part of her funeral. It was right after that grandmama passed. And then we went right into Daddy passing. When Daddy passed, we came home. I don't know if we came home the evening of his funeral or the next day, but the next day was Valentine's Day, and we took all of our grandkids except Molly, to, and only because she doesn't live here, to Build-A-Bear to celebrate Lexi's birthday. And then we had Lexi's first birthday on the next day. And so yeah, you had the grief of the loss and then the celebration of life like happening at the same time. And I remember thinking that, and if I remember right, like, because it was still winter, something was blooming, because I remember making a nature connection to winter and blooming and feeling the same of grief and life at the same time. Yeah, that it's okay to feel more than one emotion at the time.
Yeah,
Like
at the same time.
it's complicated, but I think we were designed for complication. Like, I think we were
Yes.
designed, Brene Brown says we're hardwired for struggle and worthy of love and belonging. So yeah, I think we were designed that way, to be able to feel more than one thing at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So what's one thing that you've learned since your dad's passed?
The firsts after he passed are hard. So my first birthday, his birthday, Father's Day, the holidays, those firsts, there's a definite, his presence is definitely missed. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, we grieve differently. And so, I have two sisters, and then, Daddy had a wife. And so how we all grieve, and even watching my kids grieve and how they grieved differently. Just giving people the permission to do what they need to do, how they need to do it, without an expectation of what that's supposed to look like.
That's important.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think that can divide families when we have an expectation of what your situation should look like or how you're supposed to grieve. I mean, I don't even know how you do that. Like, I don't know how I still don't always know how I'm supposed to grieve. I don't know how you think you're supposed to know how I'm supposed to grieve,
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And then what we need, like, some people are the ones who will visit the grave site, and that's important to them. I am not that girl. I will not make a point to do that. Like, that is not where I go to remember him. I remember him. I have his picture in my living room, one of my favorite pictures of us. I have letters that he wrote periodically throughout my life. And his wife went through his things and gave us all the things that we had sent to him.
Oh.
So, like, all of our cards over the years and, different things. And she gave those back to us. And so just having those memories, I
What
think
do you do with those?
I made little card books, like I hole punched them and strung them together, to keep them together, because I can't throw them away.
I know.
Yeah. So I strung them together because it's something that, those are the things I hold on to. I'm not a big stuff person, but those are the things that matter. Like, I have a couple letters from him, when I was a teenager, when him and my mom had split up. And then when he was 70, we celebrated Passover together. And it was the first time he'd ever taken communion.
Oh.
It's very interesting because he never felt worthy to take communion before, ever in his life. He was 70. Hello, people. And so we did the full, like, he had the kosher wine, and we did the bread without yeast, the whole thing. And we had a whole meal, and he took communion, but he wrote the blessing that day. And I have it in his handwriting on his yellow legal pad. And I think I probably just asked him for it at the end of the day because that mattered to me. And thank goodness that I thought of that in the moment. The
Oh,
other thing,
that's special.
yeah, so I have that, and I think I'm gonna frame it. I think I'm gonna
Oh, yeah,
with a
that would be
picture. But yeah, and I think it was when he was 70, I'm pretty sure. And then Tim baptized Daddy. Daddy had never been baptized either.
I remember that in the Contentnia Creek in
Sure
Lenore
did.
County, North
Yep.
Carolina.
And that really brown, scary water. He sure did. He sure did. Yeah. I think the other thing that I'm so glad that I did is I'm a picture taker, and my daddy does not ever, has never liked his picture taken.
Okay.
But I did selfies with him all the time when I was there. And he doesn't look at the camera. He always looks at you.
Okay. That's lovely.
Well, and when you're taking group shots, he never looks at the camera. I don't know why, but he never looks at the camera. I have very few pictures, very few, where he actually is looking straight ahead. But they'll pop up in my time hop all the time now. And that's precious. And I'm so glad that I did that, that I have those recorded memories of us together.
Yes.
The different seasons of life.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that I did that. And it was probably annoying to him, I'm sure. But I'm so glad that I did it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How about you? What's something you've learned since?
To never be too proud to ask for help.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Never
think,
be.
yeah, they definitely grew up in a different era. Now, your daddy was how old?
72.
Okay, daddy was 74 when he passed. So I am sure they have crossed paths at some point. There's no way they could both be from Lenore County and not have crossed
And
paths.
not have cross paths. Yeah.
Yeah. I bet they partied together at some point.
They probably did.
I'll have to ask Marita if daddy knew your daddy.
Mm.
She might know. Yeah.
So, but I think one of the biggest things that I've learned since his passing, just to pass on some simple wisdom.
Okay. Yes. Please share this because this is good.
Is to make absolutely sure that you have your affairs in order in the best way you know how. Now, I believe that my daddy, that there was a gap. There's a gap in some things when it comes to his affairs. And I don't believe it was done intentionally. I absolutely believe it was just because he didn't know.
Right.
Okay. So, because some people think that you have to go to an attorney and pay $5,000 to have a will. I'm here to tell you that a will can be as simple as you going to your neighbor's house and writing on a legal pad a napkin. And if there are two parties that witness that do not gain financially from what you have written on that paper napkin, that absolutely will stand up in court. But that it is necessary for the people that you leave behind to have a will. And if you have a checking account and a savings account, to put on that checking account payable upon death or paid on death.
Right.
They're not on your checkbook. They're not on your account. They can't touch your money while you're still alive.
Right.
But upon your passing, and look, it doesn't even have to be your children. If you want to make the SPCA, if you want your local charity, you know, they can't do anything with that. It sits in a bank. It now becomes the states, the counties. And first of all, I do want to preface in saying I am not trying to give you legal advice whatsoever.
Right.
I just know from my experience
Right.
that things could be going a lot smoother and would be a lot simpler
Yeah.
on my brother. And I say my brother because I don't live in the same state. my brother and my dad, they live in North Carolina. And so I cannot represent myself for my dad's estate in the state of North Carolina because I don't live in North Carolina. So basically, my brother has had to, he's doing it all.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, there's nothing I can really help him do.
Right.
So now I could have appointed a representation, someone to represent me or hired an attorney, but I trust my brother. We're
Sure.
not going to argue, okay,
Right.
over anything. We're not. That's it. But it would have just made things a lot simpler on us
Yeah.
had my dad had these things set in place. A will, had
Mm-hmm.
had his checking account payable upon death. And honestly, he had a plan for what was supposed to happen when he passed, but it did not work out that way. And so money has had to be spent that was not really set aside for.
Right.
So had he had that checking account the way it was supposed to be, for his heirs, we wouldn't have been concerned if that plan
Right.
plan A didn't turn out the way he wanted it to. So, but I say all of that to say that it does not have to be complicated. It does not have to take money. Look, it'd be better if you and your neighbor both would go to a notary or have a notary come to the neighbor's kitchen table. But absolutely, you could go and write your will and have two people that do not gain financially from that to witness it, and that would stand up in court. And so when there's no will, all of that property, money, anything, now becomes the state's
Yeah.
until, they can determine who the executor or the administrator of the estate is going to be. So, I just say all that to say that, if you, I'm telling you this because now you know, and
Mhm.
now you cannot unknow.
Right.
So do these things to help your family that you leave behind.
Yeah.
And listen, if you really want to help them, now this is not anything that has happened with in the case of my dad, but it did happen with my sweet granny. My granny planned her funeral 10 years before she passed.
Yep. Grandmama planned hers too.
Right down to the songs that were going to be sung and the flowers, the spray that she wanted on top of her casket. She picked it all out. And you know what? The funeral home director told us in my hometown is that she saved the family $8,000 by doing that because she planned it 10 years ago and they had to honor the prices of 10 years ago. The only thing that the family had to pay for at that point was the obituary put in the newspaper, and the flowers were way more than $150.
Yeah.
But that's what they were 10 years prior. But and the funeral director said, as far as the funeral costs were concerned, she saved the family $8,000. But let's look outside of the money. Not only did she save the family $8,000, but what she saved us was the torment
Mm-hmm.
having to go in there and make the decisions. Because when someone passes, and especially in the case of like your dad and my dad, when it was totally unexpected.
Yeah.
Okay. And so when things like that are unexpected, your heart is hurting. You have a lot of questions and you are completely taken aback that one day they're alive and the next day they are not. And it was unexpected. And so now we want the best of everything. And before you know it, now you got a $20,000 funeral going on. And yeah. And so not that I'd say that you would ever regret that money, the family would ever regret spending that money, but most of the time that money is being spent out of emotion.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I
And
remember
so,
going through that.
yeah,
Grandmama did have hers planned. And so we helped Mama with, the details and what have you, but Daddy did not. And so with his wife, the three of us did, go through that process and help pick things out. And we tried to pick them out based on who he was, because he
yes,
was a very simple. He didn't
right.
like extravagant, or anything like that. But it was no less than $10,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And not that we regret spending $10,000, for that. But
Well, and
you
that was just the
it,
funeral stuff. That doesn't cover the headstone or, any of those things either.
right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. So, but I think it's very important that we have these conversations when we've
Yeah.
experienced things where we recognize
Yeah.
that things could be a lot simpler
Mhm.
had we put these, for lack of a better word, these things in place.
Right.
So, yeah. So really, I've started writing things down, and I'm about to like really get serious, about, making sure that my all of my important papers are in one place,
Right.
and that my family knows what that looks like. Because I was thinking about that one day at my dad's house, and I was like, oh gosh, what do we do next? Like, what's next? Because I'm overwhelmed. I'm cleaning out the refrigerator, and what's next? And I'm thinking, I own a business, but I am a tenant in that building. Does my family, if anything were to happen to me, my family, first of all, I don't even, they know, of course, where my business is, but do they even know who I rent from? Do they
Right.
know who to call? Would they know what to do? Would they know how to, close the business out, as far as the corporation is concerned? Yeah.
They know
And
how
not
to
that,
notify your clients.
yeah,
Right.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
It's good.
it's very, very, interesting. So,
Well, when Tim retired from the Marine Corps, and so he was active during the height of the invasion into Iraq and Afghanistan and all of that in the early 2000s. And so we used to teach classes where we talked about deployments, and we talked about, we would talk very briefly, but about the CACO. So that would be the Casualty Assistance Call Officer. Gosh, I don't remember what it stands for now. But anyway, in the event that something happens to your Marine, right? Like, what's the process? What does that look like? And I would always tell the ladies, like, this is not an emotional conversation. We need to know what this looks like, because it's like sitting down with your life insurance agent. Like, you just need to know, what are you entitled to? What are your benefits? What's next? And so I think that gave us a good basis for kind of already putting some things in place early on. However, when Daddy did pass, Tim does so much with our finances that there was a lot that I didn't know. Like, I don't really know, like, in the event, well, it's written down now, but I did not know, like, what his life insurance looked like. What would it look like staying in the house? What does, all of that. So when we went away, and we went away shortly after that, but we wrote everything out. Like what our finances look like at the time, what we owed to who, whatever, like all of that, anything that was specific that we wanted to ensure that our children got in the event that something happened to us. And then when we went away earlier this year in January, we updated that, updated where the financials stuff was, updated, anything that we had added to us or, didn't have now or whatever. And so that's our plan, to do that every year. And it just stays on my desktop, and it just says, in the event, like, so the kids know that it's there. And we even messaged them and said, like, okay, if something happens to us, is there something you want? Like, tell me, is there something
yeah.
that means something to you? Is there something that's special to you? Because the last thing you want people to do is fight over stuff, because death brings out the crazy in people.
It does. It
Wow.
does. And I will say this to you, that I know someone, who said, well, I don't really care what they fight about after I'm dead and gone. I said, well, you've never nurtured your children's relationship being alive, and so now you want, like, them to fight over stuff after you're gone. That's not healthy. Like, what in the world?
Mm-mm. No, I
Yeah.
don't want
And
them to fight.
yeah. And honestly, she still didn't make it right. And guess what? Whoever the
Oh,
administrator of the state was got everything.
wow. And that causes so much resentment in families. Yeah. Yeah. When Tim's dad passed, he didn't have a will either. And it was complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because again, people think differently about different things, how things
Right.
should be handled, what should happen to the stuff, like all of it. Like people just
Right.
think differently about it. So, you know, having those conversations in advance, with your children, with your family, writing it down is important because then people can honor how you wanted things done with your stuff,
Yours.
your life, your assets, your whatevers, your
Yeah.
memories.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's important.
And look, I just recently have another girlfriend who has experienced the loss of her dad. And just to tell the whole story, he was her stepdad, but that never mattered to either one of them. He was her dad. But his family was like, he never had any other children, but his biological family, like his brother and his nephews, and just were not good people.
Mhm.
And he was very well off. And by the grace of God, he appointed one of his friends who he knew had a backbone
Mhm.
to be the executor of his estate, who knew that he would protect at all cost, that he would do exactly what he wanted him to do, and that he wouldn't care what his biological family said. And thank God he did that, because things are turning out exactly the way he wanted them, exactly the way they should have been, really and truly. And the family, the biological family, is not happy. As a matter of fact, like, they called every place that was the obituary was going to be printed. They called all of those places and made sure to state that she was the stepdaughter.
Wow.
And because he's the biological brother, I mean, like, they did what he said to do. And now look, it is not hurting anybody, really,
Right.
but I mean, it hurt her feelings because she never really, he was her dad.
Right.
But yeah, family gets crazy.
Yeah.
And
It-
especially when they know there's a lot at stake.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's crazy.
it's crazy. So
Yeah.
anyway, I hope this podcast has been helpful. I hope that it has added value to somebody's life today.
Mhm.
I hope that you have heard something that will um, help you, and
Yeah.
maybe um, and maybe for that person who doesn't have anything set in place,
Well,
that you
and
would kind of get the ball rolling on that.
I would say, like, you don't have to have a lot.
No, no,
I
no,
mean, you
no.
don't have to have a lot. You just need to make sure there's a plan for whatever there is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so don't think you don't need a will because you don't have anything to will to somebody. Okay. Because I mean, you got something like,
Yeah,
wherever you're living or whatever you're driving or whatever's in your checking account, like whatever
that's right.
your beneficiary things are on any of your life insurance or whatever, like you need somebody, and you need somebody that's going to take care of the business of closing things out and sending your death certificate to places and all of that. Like you need somebody that, yeah.
Will be an advocate for you for several months after you're
Yeah.
passed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's a lot.
Yeah. It's a lot.
It is a lot. And if you're a blended family, man, talk about that stuff in advance. Don't
Please.
don't leave any surprises.
Yeah.
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 So KJ, remind me, we had breakfast not long ago, and you were saying there were four things that you learned going through the process. I know one was the will, and one was adding people to your accounts. So it said payable upon death. But what were the other two?
Actually, these are four things that a financial
Okay.
advisor was telling me: that you need a current will, you need
Mm-hmm.
a durable power of attorney, you need a health proxy, which is someone that is willing to make medical decisions uh, that will not gain financially from your
Pass.
death.
Right.
Yes. And then the checking account.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
to
really
make
good.
yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah,
for the listeners, I'll add that to the notes of the show. I'll add those 4 things for you so you can see them and maybe screenshot it if you're looking
yeah.
to take notes.
And look, again, I don't really know the difference in what the power of attorneys are, but he specifically said a durable power of attorney. So that must be important. However, I do know that a power of attorney ceases upon death. So
Okay.
yeah. So again, I'm not here to give legal advice. These are
Sure.
just things that I have
Right.
learned in the last 5 weeks.
Right.
So or it's actually been longer than that. My dad passed on, well, maybe, yeah, 5. He passed on July 15th. So yeah, of this year. So, but yeah, very, very, very interesting. So very interesting.
So in closing, what I will say is both of us lost our fathers unexpectedly.
Yes.
For KJ, like very quickly, unexpectedly, like you had no heads up. For us, Daddy was sick, but he wasn't. And then he was, and then like, yeah, but very, again, very unexpected. So in that, I'm going to remind you to make memories, take pictures, say the things you need to say, tell people you love them, make that your norm, give forgiveness where it's needed. Like, just don't have regrets. Like, how can you live each day so that at the end of the day, you don't have any regrets? Yeah, because we don't have promises for that. Like we don't have promises for guarantees for later. So yeah. Cherish the time that you have, make the most of it. That's what I would say. Yeah.
Good.
So, all right, you guys, thanks for listening. Remember, you can support us through Patreon. You can support us by sharing these podcasts with your friends and family and putting them out on social media. We appreciate you so much.
Have a good day. Thanks for listening, y'all.
Hey, you guys, we just want to say thank you today. We want to thank our listeners and those of you that have subscribed to the Simple Conversations podcast. Friends, thanks.
Hey y'all, this is KJ from Simple Conversations Where Grace Meets Strength. Thank y'all so much for listening and tuning in. If it weren't for y'all, there would be no reason for us to do this. Listen, we need your help. We need your support. So head on over to patreon.com/Simple Conversations and decide exactly how you want to be involved. For $5 a month, you would get access to behind the scenes content. For $25 a month, you would get that as well as a shout out on the podcast or fan input. As a supporter for $50 a month, you would get all that in the previous 2 tiers, as well as a one-time gift or book that Alice and I have read or are reading that we think would add value to your life. Or for $100 a month, we consider you family. You ever heard that before? That's friends that are so good that we consider you family. So you would get everything in the previous 3 tiers, as well as exclusive branded merchandise from Simple Conversations. So listen, our heart's desire is to do more and to be more. And so in order for us to do that, we need help. And so we're dependent on you to help us make that happen. So thanks for tuning in and thanks for your support. See y'all.